What is up, guys? I'm Kyle at Fortune. Today we're putting a bed rack on the Colorado. There are a ton of bed racks to choose from for trucks now. They're just getting super popular. Everyone's putting the rooftop tent and whatever other gear they have on those racks. We decided we were gonna need one too. We have a pretty big rooftop tent that we're gonna throw on the Colorado, and we definitely want it to be a little bit higher than bed level. That way we can actually still put stuff in the bed. At the same time, we don't want it so high that the rooftop tent is gonna be sticking up way above the roof line, giving us, a higher center of gravity and all of that drag in the wind and dropping our miles per gallon even more. We definitely want it to be at the right spot, and for us that's like right level with the cab and the roof rack. So we ended up going with a bed rack from Chassis Unlimited. You probably remember our bumpers, both the front and the rear are from Chassis Unlimited. So we decided to stick with them and go with their relatively new bed rack system called the Thorax. So they have some vehicle specific racks, and then they have another series that is just the universal rack. So the rack comes in two different lengths. We ended up going with the shorter one since we have a short bed on the Colorado, but they do also make a long one if you have a long bed or a full-size truck that you need to use it in. Don't really know a whole lot about these racks, but it's supposed to be universal, so it should fit on our truck. We'll get it open and figure out what we need to do to get this thing ready to put on the truck. Very well packaged box once again. Got all the pieces here, it looks like. Bag of bolts, washer, and nuts. Read these directions and see what we're in for. This rack is not powder coated, so we're going to need to clean it, throw some primer on it. Then we'll throw some paint on this, get it assembled, throw it on the truck. Most of this metal looks pretty clean, but it does have some residue on it that needs to be cleaned off. So what we used was some mineral spirits. We just put it on the rag, rubbed down all of the metal. Then we used a separate rag to dry off all the metal, and this all came out pretty clean. Actually, a lot of residue came off this. So if you're gonna not get it powder coated like we did, make sure you take the time to clean this right so that primer and the paint is gonna stick like it's supposed to. So here's a look at the primer we're using. This is the darker color from Rust-Oleum, and this is self-etching primer. Basically what they say this does is it helps smooth out all the surfaces while priming it, so you just have a smoother finish. I actually ran out of this while I was priming it and did not want to go to the store, so I just switched it up and grabbed another can of primer, which was this one. This is the primer sealer in the lighter gray. What this primer is supposed to do is help the paint bond better with the metal surface and this primer itself. So then when I was painting with this, I ran out of this one too because it was only half a can. Just to keep the chaos going, I ended up finding another can of the self-etching primer and continued finishing with that. So I have like a camouflage pattern of primer, but who cares? It doesn't matter. We just want to make sure these things are primed so when we put our paint on it, the paint is going to stick and not want to chip off. Both of the bumpers that we have and the roof rack kind of have the same textured powder coat finish on it. Not super abrasive. We wanted to match that on our bed rack too, but because we didn't get the powder coated option, we had to do it ourselves. And the paint I decided to go with is this Rust-Oleum truck bed coating. I just got this from Home Depot. It's a pretty tall can. We ended up using 2 of these cans and really impressed with the finish on this. The finish reminds me of like grip tape on a skateboard. Not as aggressive as that, but definitely a tough textured paint. I really like how this looks, and it seems like it matches the texture and the color of both the bumpers and the roof rack. So very happy with this. You guys should check this out if you're thinking of spraying your bed or bumpers or any of your accessories like that. So we've got everything painted up. There's the 6 cross beams right there. A couple more right here. It's time to start assembling this whole thing together. I think what I'm gonna do is put it together upside down like this, and the whole thing's pretty light, so I think I'm gonna try to do this by myself. We'll see, I might need the wife to come save me later. And then hopefully from there we'll be able to make some marks, drill some holes, and we'll put the rest of the hardware through. We've We've hit our first snag with the rack. This is one I definitely thought would not be a problem. All the adjustability in this rack, I thought for sure this thing was gonna fit. But I started off by measuring the distance between the two bed rails, and I was like, okay, that's how far these need to be when I assemble them. But then when I went to test fit it, doesn't fit. The inside of the bed mount right there and right there, I need it to be like right at 55 inches. But the problem is when I go to 55 inches, these mounting holes that the bolts are supposed to go through are covered up. So they're supposed to look like this. You can see these ones are maxed out. When those bolts are at the minimum width for the bed, we are about a ½ inch too wide to make it fit. So to get it to be 55 inches, it's got to look like this. And you can see all the bolt holes are covered up if it's even. The bolt hole is right behind this. So if I just cut this slit right here, it would fit. The other problem is this bolt hole is like right here, so it's covered up. So the other option I'm looking at is putting one in right here and then the other one in at the top. Need to take some measurements, make sure it's as far back as it can go. We've got a really long rooftop tent that's gonna go on here, so I want it to be centered on there as much as possible. Push it back as far as we can get it, but you can see this bump right here that's probably about it, but we want the measurements to be same on both sides. And then you can see we've got about 6 holes to drill on each side, so we'll need to mark those and drill them out to 3/8. Samurai! We use a punch to mark some holes for our 1/8 inch drill bit to get started into the plastic, which will guide it into the metal on the bed. And then we finished off with a step bit going up to 3/8. Made really easy work of this thin metal that is on the side of the truck bed. So the rest of it went pretty smooth after we had to modify the rack a little bit. It wasn't a huge deal. Most things for me just don't work out that way anyways, and a lot of it's my fault. I like to change things up a little bit, but later on we can drill some more holes up here and put some more bolts in if I feel like we need to, but right now I'm feeling pretty good about it. We now have all of our hardware on both sides. The first 3 holes, 1, 2, 3, took an 1.5 inch long bolt. These back 3, 1, 2, 3 right here, all took a 2-inch bolt because those parts were a little bit thicker. This rack is usually pushed a little bit more forward than what I did, but like I said, my rooftop tent is huge. It's gonna hang off like a foot after this. So I wanted it back as far as I could get it. And you know, these little bolts right there, like that's kind of hard access. So one of the things I did, I used a little magnetic extension, which was really great because I kept dropping the washers and the nuts back there, and I could just use that to get it out of the nooks and crannies. And then also I was using it to throw the washers on the threads. You know, you can't get my big fat fingers in there, so that helped out a lot. All right guys, that is the install for this bed rack. As usual for me, it wasn't super easy, but it also wasn't super hard. We had to do a little bit of modifying to the rack, but you know what? If you're gonna work on trucks and build up trucks, you got to expect this to happen. Not everything is bolt on and just going to work as advertised. I think the design of the rack and the way the sides and the top are bent, it actually looks pretty cool. It looks like there's a ton of mounting options for the rooftop tent and the accessories to put on the side. And when I measured it, I think it was like 31 inches from the bottom of the rack to the top of the bed. So we still have a good amount of room in there. The bed isn't like destroyed putting that roof rack on. We didn't have to drill holes in the top, although you could if you wanted to. And we can unbolt this rack relatively easily and, you know, pull it off and use the truck for truck stuff if we have to. Putting some weight on it and just building it, it feels pretty tough. And that's great because it is a pretty lightweight rack too. So the weight to strength ratio is pretty awesome. Anyways, we have the rooftop tent. It is in that huge box that was in our garage, and I believe it's 74 inches long, so it's pretty long. And I said in this video several times it's going to overhang the back of the truck, and that's okay. I'm planning on putting a tire carrier and, you know, maybe something to carry a gas can and maybe an air tank. I don't know, whatever extra stuff we have to put on the back. So it shouldn't look too weird once we have all that stuff on there. If you want to look at any of the parts that we're using in this video or any of the tools, just look down in the description. I'll make sure I put some links down there if you guys are interested. Really excited to get that rooftop tent on. That's like the last thing that we really need to get on this so we can go out and do camping when the weather gets nice to do that. And we're really looking forward to it. So if you are interested in seeing where this build goes and want to follow along with us, the easiest way to do that is just subscribe, and that way you'll see when our new videos come out. We also have an Instagram account that we put some updates on, so go ahead and check those out if you want. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.